The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
All right, Thursday means Josh Ward. And quite a few times this season, it'll mean some Tennessee basketball to talk about. And we've got that Tennessee, North Carolina, as the Vols decided that tip-off, I think, was about 45 minutes later than the rest of us. But they ended up making that somewhat of a close game. However, if you're just watching the end score, you're probably kind of like, oh, that was a close game. Good job at North Carolina. No, Tennessee really didn't score early in the game and struggled throughout mightily before they made it somewhat of a game. And then the news on Connect that we'll get the latest on, suffering what looked like an ankle injury, and reading some body language didn't look fantastic, but we'll get into that more. Also, Arch Manning, you know, that other guy that was mentioned alongside Nico, well, he might transfer, and I'm curious which SEC school would we most like to see him go to from a content standpoint. They got a lot of red, white, and blue going on, and his dad, his grandfather played there. So we've got a lot to go. Josh Ward will join us, a recruiting update, as this is a crazy busy time when you talk about transfer portals and everything else. So recruiting will be affected. Josh Ward on the Vols bowl game. It looks like the Gator Bowl. Is that a good thing? Is that happy? Is that a good thing for people? And what players might you just soon see roll on so you can see some other players? So a lot of key balls with decisions to make soon. First, Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Dave?
Never better. I'm ready to get off and rolling. I got excited about sitting down, watching this basketball team, and then what happened to me every time I get really tuned into a sporting event. I go out of my way, and I've got my chicken fingers there, and I'm ready to go. And that game wasn't a game early on. Let's talk that and some Lady Vols now. Today's tough question brought to you by Andy Mason of Andy Mason, realestate.com.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, so Lady Vols in action, too. They lose to Indiana. Tennessee loses to UNC. And what is the bigger concern? I just asked you that question. Let's get it on the message board. Hit like and subscribe. Andy Mason, best prices, best service in East Tennessee. Over 40 years of experience in Knoxville. He's my realtor. Should be yours. Andy Mason, realestate.com. So the men's loss at North Carolina, or Lady Vols lost to Indiana. What's the bigger concern, Caleb Calhoun? And let's hear it from you on the message board.
So I'm gonna say this out up front. Neither loss is worthy of panic, not just because they were both terrain teams on the road, but because both of them were without key players. The Lady Vols are playing without Rakia Jackson right now, who is their best player. The men were before Don. Everyone's going to say the Don Connect injury. That doesn't count. Tennessee had already lost that game by the time he got hurt. You and I both agree on that, Dave. They lost that game in the first half, getting blown out.
Yeah, but the worst night, I'm going to factor that into the worst night, but it didn't affect the game. The game was done and determined at that point.
And that game, the reason it wasn't a concern is because Tennessee, they didn't have Toby Awaka, and then Jonas Adu got in foul trouble early. Rick Barnes is playing more finesse 4 guards this year, which is fine. But if both your bigs can't go, you're in big trouble. And that's what happened to Tennessee last night in the first half. It was just that simple. So I would say, even with the Connect injury, long-term, the Lady Vols loss is a bigger concern. And the reason the Lady Vols loss is a bigger concern is Connect looks like he hurt his ankle pretty bad. He doesn't look like he hurt it to the point where he can't get to 100% by March. And I've told you, I don't care about this men's Tennessee basketball team until March.
I'm getting ready to do the same thing, but let's be real careful not to play doctor, because I'm getting ready to do the same thing, and you kind of are too. But let's be careful not to overextend ourselves, because my communications degree did not cover physiology and the way the body works.
That's fine. That's fine. Wes Rucker tweeted last night that Connect was seen walking to the bus without any assistance last night after the game.
Yeah, but here are my thoughts on that. Have you ever severely sprained an ankle? I have. It goes completely numb, and I didn't know that I did anything wrong hours afterwards. I woke up the next day and I couldn't move. Here's what scared me about the Connect thing, and I don't want to play doctor, but I'm going to kind of do so. So it was obvious that he was shut down. He was at the end of the bench, right?
Yes.
I mean, he was not coming back into the game. They didn't ice it immediately, which either makes me think that's an oversight, and a pretty big one that's tantamount to the way they handled Mike Tyson when he got knocked out by Buster Douglas. You're supposed to put ice on it, not air. But anyway, either that's an oversight, or they said this guy ain't playing anytime soon and ice isn't going to help him. That to me makes it a worse night for the Vols than the Lady Vols. I don't care if they blew a 40-point lead against UConn, and it was the Pat Summitt Tribute Classic. It doesn't matter. To me, one of your best players with an ankle injury in basketball is a big, big, big deal this time of year.
See, that last part, I think it's a big, big deal, just not this time of year. I've never heard of a sprained ankle, Dave. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never heard of a sprained ankle taking 3 months to get back from, ever. And
well, here's true. If he just sat there and did nothing, but when he tries to work his way back, those ligaments are always a little bit looser. I still am.
So have him sit there and do nothing. Have him sit there and do nothing. You don't need anything. You don't need him till March.
That's fine. No, I'm good with that. But when he comes back, are those ligaments a little bit looser? I still to this day am more likely to roll my left ankle than my right ankle because of an injury when I was 17 years old. So those ankle things scare me. I don't think you want a Connect that's 80% headed into March. You would agree with that, right?
Yeah, you want 100% Connect. You want to 100% Connect. Yes, you want 100% Connect. And
because he's got to connect for with other players.
Yes, it's like a relationship. You can't have an 80% Connect. You have to 100% connect with your partner.
I'm surprised you didn't like the Connect for. By the way, but just so you know, to a very small extent, you're seeing Dave Hooker's game when you watch Connect play. So from now on, think that's what Dave did. Because I had the long arms and I could use that scoop where people that are
Dave
more
was the original creamsicle Mamba.
I was the original creamsicle Mamba. When I played, I could do the little flip underneath where people are like, I'm more athletic than you and I should be blocking this, but I'm not for some reason. So as a whole, I will take the Connect and Tennessee's loss at North Carolina as being more significant. As far as the actual loss, it looked like Tennessee showed up and like, holy Hannah, we're playing at North Carolina. This program should be beyond that, and it shouldn't have taken until the second half for them to get their wherewithal.
Dave, I don't think that happened at all. I think it's very simple. I think that Toby Awaka was hurt and Jonas Aida was in foul trouble. All we saw is that Cade Phillips and JP Estrella, both 4-star bigs that were recruited, they're freshmen for a reason. I haven't said this in basketball in a long time because of the one and done era, but this is the first time where I looked at a player that I thought could be good but played like a freshman. Like the actual freshman by his label mattered, and that was Cade Phillips last night. And so,
let me ask you this to give our listeners some perspective on where you stand exactly, and that is, are we going to be having a discussion within the next 3 weeks that Kelly Harper is on the hot seat? Because if so, then the Lady Vol loss was bigger.
Yes, that's where I was going to go with this. Because I know they didn't have Rakia Jackson, but Tennessee has, based on recruiting, top 5 talent. And Dave, you know this with women's basketball. It's not like men's basketball. The top 5 in women's basketball, the gap between number 5 and number 15 is huge, right? In terms of talent in women's basketball. It's gigantic. You should be able to withstand against a top 20, top 15 team, even your best player being hurt if you're Kelly Harper and you're the Lady Vols. And they had a 42-27 lead last night Indiana shot 0 of 9 from 3, and the Lady Vols still lost that game. That's a game you can't lose. And I think Kelly Harper, she's stuck in a time. She's stuck in a time. I mean, in the same way Rick Barnes is stuck in a time, I will say on the other end, but I think Rick Barnes is willing to adjust a little more. Kelly Harper is full on the Pat Summitt philosophy, which that's not a knock on Pat Summitt, but Pat Summitt did it in a time where it worked. And the Pat Summitt philosophy, I would assume Pat Summitt would have changed. You know what it's like? I'll give you a perfect example. It would be like it would be like, you remember Bear Bryant's coaching tree of all these coaches, Bill Curry, you mentioned him the other day, Jackie Sherrill, all these coaches that came after him. And they stuck to the Bear Bryant philosophy all the way into the 2000s of, the whole, you should never throw the ball. Because what was it for saying? 4 things can happen when you can throw the ball and 3 things are bad. And Bear Bryant lived and died by that.
That's so stupid. But anyway, yeah. I mean, it's weird to call one of the best coaches of all time and say that he has a stupid take on something. But that is a stupid take.
Again, Bear Bryant was saying that in the 60s and the 70s. If Bear Bryant were coaching in the 2000s, Bear Bryant would not have lived by the Bear Bryant philosophy of the 70s.
Nah.
Okay? And so to live by that
totally
philosophy
agree.
is stupid. And so Kelly Harper is living by the Pat Summitt philosophy that Pat Summitt herself probably would not live by if she were coaching today. So
there's no telling what Pat Summitt would have been because she constantly evolved. She would have evolved probably 2 or 3 times between when she essentially stopped coaching, which wasn't her last year. It was the year before. That's when she was kind of disconnected. She would have evolved probably 2 or 3 times since that point if she was still coaching. Always go to offthehooksports.com for the latest. We like to call them smart, intelligent takes on the Vols. You can download the app that's right down below. You can relive the greatest season in Tennessee football history with the behind-the-scenes stories about the 1998 national championship team. They're still on Black Friday specials. That is right down below as well. We've got
the
to
issue
app.
A correction.
Yes.
It was Notre Dame last night, not Indiana. Indiana is who they beat last week. And funny enough, I really apologize for that. It was
I was lumping them all together. It's the Midwest. It's the Midwest, and honestly, you don't want to be there. So we'll just lump all of those schools together. That's
the Lady Vols lost to Notre Dame. They lost at home to Notre Dame. It was a bad loss. I apologize. I don't know
that
why.
On me. I mean, you could have just said Dave.
They both play in Indiana, and the Lady Vols did just recently play Indiana. And I don't know why I had Notre Dame in my head. I just massive correction. I'm really sorry. I hate when I get those things wrong.
That's okay. The big Amish group that is there right outside of Notre Dame. Were you aware of that? I've literally passed a person that was in a buggy being drawn by a horse while I was driving Mike Strange, Drew Edwards, and John Adams to some Courtyard Marriott in the middle of nowhere so that John could get his it's not recruiting, his Marriott points. So there is a strong Amish community of which we got to show them a 4-cylinder sedan that would do about 90 miles an hour. I think that's the first time they saw that. So Tennessee football recruiting, getting back to the Vols, as this is a monster month. And I don't think you can really overstate how big of a month this is. You're going to have some coaches that are going to take a look elsewhere. If I'm Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator, I'm going to take a look elsewhere. You're going to have players. We're going to get to Arch Manning, who might look around a little bit. And also we're going to take a look at Tennessee recruiting, which right now, if you look at it, took a little bit of a body blow recently. Vols at number 12. They had been as high as number 9. What happened? Let's go ahead and give that what the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, so tell me what's going on. What the H? How did the Vols slip to number 12 in recruiting when they haven't picked up or lost anybody? But there are always things changing in recruiting, and it is brought to you today by our friends at Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. BanksJones.com. Why Banks & Jones? Other lawyers say they'll go to trial. They won't. They'll settle and settle for less. Banks & Jones, ready to go to trial for you. Truly Tennessee's trial attorney. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, BanksJones.com. whether it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. They got you. What's happening in recruiting? Why is Tennessee dropping to 12? Should I sound the alarm?
I don't think you need to sound the alarm. I think it just has to do with a lot of other schools have been making moves recently, and Tennessee has not. Most notably, Miami has flipped an Ohio State commitment that was a pretty big splash for them and pushed them into the top 5 in recruiting recently. And Ohio State's still number 2, so they weren't going to go anywhere. Texas A&M is somehow they are still hanging on. They are ahead of Tennessee right now at number 11. The firing of Jimbo Fisher didn't have much of an impact. That NIL cash is still just rolling through, Dave.
Well, here's the other thing that I brought up, and that was with John. I mean, people ask me because I went to Powell High School, and Walter Nolan went to Powell High School, even though he has very little. I mean, my dog, who I just got, has more ties to Powell than Walter Nolan does. But people were asking me, will he just naturally go back because things didn't go right at A&M? Well, here's the thing. He could already be neck deep in NIL money. Are you going to want to turn down X in hopes of getting X plus, especially leaving A&M? It would be different if he were leaving UC Irvine, like McAllen Castles did, right? You can top them. I don't know that you can necessarily just go out and top A&M with the NIL cash they have. I don't think that's a given at all. Caleb?
Yeah, I agree. A&M is one of those that they are the Yankees or Red Sox. And by the way, so is Tennessee of college football with NIL cash. I mean, they are out there buying players left and right, and they're going to keep doing that. Texas was another one. Texas added a couple of big commits over the last month. Remember, they got Ryan Wingo out of St. Louis, which we thought Tennessee was in play for, the 5-star. And then they recently, in mid-November, got Wardell Mack, a defensive back, and that pushed them ahead of Tennessee. So there's just been other teams making moves. I think Tennessee's been okay. The question we have that I've been having, because Dave, you were kind of throwing recruiting. You're not throwing recruiting rankings out the window anymore, but you understand the politicking that goes on. Do you put more stock now with coaches into what they're doing on the trail or what you see from them in game now, calling plays? What matters more to you?
Well, it has to be both. And you asked that question on our 3:45 a.m. production meeting, and I thought more about it throughout the morning. I went ahead and ran my, it was a marathon Thursday for me. So I went ahead and charted my, 24 and a half miles? No, I didn't do that. I think it's both. I think if I'm Tennessee, you can't have a major shift right now in recruiting, but if there's a little tweak, if Glenn Ellerby is considering going to Carolina and he's got a bunch of guys there that he already has a good feel for, maybe he should go to Florida instead. I'm just picking a random name, a random Tennessee assistant coach. He coaches the offensive line. I think that Florida, from what I'm hearing, their class is going to fall apart. Could be wrong. We'll see, but they've got some issues there. And that's because of Billy Napier, detail-oriented. Seems like he's on his way out, if not this year, then next. And then with Mario Cristobal, not to the same extent, I'm being told that his class would fall apart, but enough where if I'm Tennessee or any other school, I'm all go in Florida. There's no question.
And this is where the question comes in. Miami's making moves. So you're right. Florida's already starting to fall apart. Billy Napier secured a lot of commitments in June just to get an early splash to get the momentum that he needed. Miami they're doing the opposite though, Dave. They're going in the opposite direction and trending upwards right now with Mario Cristobal. Now, my question is, if you're a Miami fan, are you excited that he's doing well on the trail, or are you worried because you're like, this guy's so incompetent managing games, it doesn't matter what he does on the trail because he's just going to find ways to lose games because he's just that terrible of a coach in the game?
The latter, because you and me could have a top 10 class. You and I'm not exaggerating, could have a top 5 class at Miami. That area, that 3-county area of around Dade County is the most talent-rich area in the country. There are literally 75 to 100 Division I football players that will come out of that area annually. They're also regularly overrated. That's not to say that they are as a whole. I don't mean it. Be in that area if you're Tennessee or anybody else that wants to compete for championships. But you're more likely to get bumped from a 3 or 4 star if you're in South Florida. So you and I could look fantastic in recruiting, Caleb, but we might spit the bit on Saturday, which Mario Cristobal has done. So I think it is fool's gold, if that's what you're asking me.
So what you're saying is it's not like
I'd almost rather, let me say this. I'd almost rather be Billy Napier and things just fall apart and I can rebuild than Cristobal, who is seemingly hanging on there. That through recruiting, that to me would be incredibly frustrating.
So on the other side, though, because you and I both sit there and get blown away by the fact that Les Miles and Ed Orgeron have championships at LSU, that is just, it's laughable to say out loud. When you see that happen, are you sure that a Cristobal can't load up on talent so much that he could be as incompetent as Les Miles and still win a championship?
Well, I don't think he's that good of a coach, but let's remember this. Miami doesn't have near the fan support of LSU. I mean, they're 45 minutes from campus to go to a game there. There's not a good game day atmosphere. They are a bit of a hoity-toity school. You know, I don't like Missouri because of that. I don't like Duke basketball because of that. Miami has a little bit of that going in their athletic department.
Which is funny because they have a bunch of inner city kids playing football going around in this hoity-toity campus. I don't know how that works out.
And the campus is bizarro gorgeous. I mean, I've tried to get my son to take a trip there just for the heck of it, but he wouldn't do it. But it is. Go ahead.
So I know we wanted to move on, but I wanted to touch this too, because out west, you saw Deion Sanders has lost 3 recruits. Is that a trend? Or do you think, like, because Deion Sanders' whole selling point was recruiting, or do you think this is things falling apart under him quickly?
You know, what's funny is I thought Deion Sanders would have success there, but I'm beginning to wonder that because, you know, one of the first things, and I hate that everything cycles back to Tennessee. For some of those that aren't Tennessee fans are like, Dave, come on, you got a story about Tennessee with every one of them. But one of the things that Philip Fulmer used to do is he would sit down and he would teach all of the players on his team the history of Tennessee, what General Neyland meant to our country, meant to the University of Tennessee. And I don't think that Deion Sanders is doing that. I don't think he's having them sit down and say, you got to remember the Bill McCartney days. Those were special times. You've got to be loyal to Colorado because it's Colorado. I think he's asking kids to be loyal to Colorado because of cash. And those are two very, very different things. So if they can't play right away, if they don't have the NIL cash they can get somewhere else, and let's face it, Colorado doesn't have as much money as at least 30 or 40 other schools. They got a problem. I don't care how much weed you sell. City Heating and Air Conditioning, their guys aren't smoking weed when they look at your HVAC. 50 years in East Tennessee, integrity matters. Don't trust a fly-by-night HVAC company to tell you that you need a new unit that could cost thousands or more. How about it? This happened to me recently. We absolutely want you to support our sponsors because we give them the off-the-hook stamp of approval. cityheatandair.com had a friend just recently called them, just needed the part, saved tens of thousands of dollars. cityheatandair.com. Hot or cold? Josh is always hot, and I think I just thought of a new bit for City Heating and Air Conditioning, hot or cold. I think there's something there, but we'll visit with Josh next, who's always hot. I can even see Josh down in a little camera before he comes on. And the guy, Caleb, I think you would agree, is just always hot.
Always hot in terms of just feeling hot, or always hot in terms of just looking hot?
Click like and subscribe. 2 minutes. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center. Ah.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co.? What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic, if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TristarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TristarHatsCo.com. That's TristarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TristarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. TristarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Play to win, banksjones.com.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Let's bring Josh Ward right in here. He's rocking his Oakland Raiders starter jacket.
Las Vegas Raiders.
Las
Thank you,
Vegas,
Jake.
wherever the hell they play.
They move.
I mean, they're the most nomadic. Is it them or the Rams? The most nomadic professional team in the history of man.
Well, it's probably the Raiders, but the funny thing there is the Raiders have more fans in L.A. than the Rams do where they play. How about that?
That's right. And I was at a Metallica concert where the Rams used to play 2 weeks ago. It all circles back.
That it does. Also, the Raiders are off this week, so they deserve representation, and they're getting it today.
I click that like and subscribe button. We love having Josh Ward on board as
So the phrase
always.
used to should absolutely apply to Metallica, right? That old band. Sorry, I just wanted to troll Dave.
I saw
Rough.
Tool a few weeks ago. They rocked. They were awesome.
Tool, Taylor Swift, or Metallica. I'll let the message board weigh in on that as you've got a Swiftie here in Caleb Calhoun, and I'm a maybe soon to be converted Swiftie.
One fan base actually knows how to use the internet, and this fancy thing called cell phones.
Okay, all right, there he goes. Metallica went digital instead of analog. I'm just saying, and honestly, it sounded like it. All right, Josh, I want to get into these players who could just cruise on by and say, bowl game, schmoll game. It used to be a big deal, and then Christian McCaffrey did it. And it's not such a big deal. But there are guys that could skip the bowl game. And nowadays it seems to make sense. We used to question their character. That seemingly has changed. So let's dive into some of those guys that could forego a bowl game. And it's brought to you by Don Self of State Farm. Customer service still matters. Everybody wants a great price, and I get that. But their State Farm agent, Don Self, and his team, they take customer service seriously. How about when those claims come in? Well, they've been taking those for over 40 years. So they want to take care of you. Greater Chattanooga area, go to donself.net, donself.net. Josh, how do you view players that move on to the NFL? It used to be a dastardly thing that screamed unsportsmanlike and lack of team integrity, but it just ain't that way anymore.
Yeah, when that happened with Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette, they both did it in the same season. I recall the outrage, the uproar over McCaffrey deciding, I'm not going to go play in the Sun Bowl. I'm going to get ready for the NFL. And my thought then and my thought today continues to be, well, hold on. If coaches at the end of the regular season can jump from one school to the next, why can't a player jump from one school to the pros? What's the difference? If a coach is hired at a school, I think fans almost always expect that coach to come work for them immediately, not coach his team at the bowl game. But they expect the players to operate differently when they have more to lose in that situation. So, yeah, if a player wants to opt out, totally fine with it. My preference, selfishly, would be for all the players to go out there and play in the bowl game because it makes it more competitive, creates more storylines. But you also have the storyline of, okay, well, if somebody has to be replaced, who gets to step up and have an opportunity and kind of look ahead to the next year. So we can come up with endless angles to it. But if you're looking at it as a selfish move of a player deciding to go ahead and prepare for the NFL draft, that's actually selfish on the fan side.
Well, Josh, it's funny you say that because I think players, unless it's a playoff game, which I don't think we're going to see any player do soon. I mean, that might happen at some point, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. If it's a meaningless bowl, if it's a bowl game with no championship aspirations, isn't it kind of a win-win? Doesn't everybody benefit if the player opts out? Because they're going to be going to the NFL drafts anyway. So wouldn't you rather have those bowl practices be with the guy, like you said, who's going to replace the player and have him go ahead and get those first team reps anyway so you can see what you want? Like, what good is it for you to have a player who's going to play in the bowl game that's not even going to be there next year?
Caleb has a theory, Josh. It's shoot all seniors.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Unless you really like him and you want to see him play one more time, maybe. I don't agree that it
is just hobble them Kerrigan style.
Yeah. I don't agree that bowl games are meaningless. I don't think they carry the same value as the regular season, but I don't think they're meaningless because I watched Tennessee win the Orange Bowl and how much fans enjoyed the game and how fans traveled to the game and how they bragged about the win against Clemson after the fact. So you can't have all of that and then also say the game is meaningless. I would also say that you like to win football games. So the better players you have, like if we're talking about guys that can go to the NFL, well, you'd prefer to have them on your team if you're a coach because you want to have a better chance to win the game. You can still get them the practice reps because those guys will probably get a break in the month of December. I also think the practice time they get in December or even the bowl game reps that they get in a game, it can be greatly overstated the impact it will have on the next season. I think what guys will do in the next season is more about what they do in the weight room in the offseason, the time they spend together, film, everything that they do for an 8 to 9 month period of time to prepare, as opposed to practices in December when things are kind of all over the place, including coaches who are focused on recruiting and the transfer portal and travel. But that also doesn't mean that time is completely meaningless. I just think we can overstate it. Similar to when we talked about Nico this year. Nico should have gotten more reps at the end of games. I think if he had played against Austin Peay, it would have zero impact on what he will be next season. We have too many examples of quarterbacks in the old redshirt rules that never played a snap as true freshmen, and then his redshirt freshman went out there and balled out. If Peyton Manning had never played in 1994, I still think he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and nothing changes about his history.
I respect that. I think it's individual. I think how a guy handles either being benched or getting the hell beat out of him in the starting lineup.
Yeah, everything's individual. That would be the point. Like as a general blanket statement, I think it's greatly overrated what we talk about, what they do in the month of December or what happens in a bowl game. Also, we don't know what the opponent has to offer. Like, didn't we kind of overrate, I think I did, some of what we saw from Tennessee against Clemson in the Orange Bowl, partly knowing after the fact that, yeah, Clemson had a lot of stuff to get worked out on its own side. But that Orange Bowl victory created maybe too much hype of what Tennessee's offense could be in 2023.
Yeah,
Dave will tell you I did not overrate that bowl game.
No, you didn't. And a player within, anyway, there were some people surprised about how well Joe Milton played last year. So let's play a little game called 4 Downs. What should these cats do? And it's brought to you by Herald Group Security Solutions. I'm going to ask you about 4 names that I think have very significant decisions to be made. And then we'll throw in some more. If you have them, put them on the message board right now. Click that like and subscribe button. 4 Downs is right now brought to you by Herald Group Security Solutions.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Did you know that Herald Group Security Solutions can make your workplace and your children's school area safer? Just Google Herald Group Security Solutions or go to heraldgrp.com. Highly trained individuals. Let's avoid the tragedies that we have seen in the past. Herald Group Security Solutions, a lot of times formerly in the military, and highly trained individuals that will certainly take care of you. So, one of the guys that we're going to talk about is going to be It is. But first, Coop, what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right. So I got a couple of questions for you. Coop's got the down.
Coop here. First down.
All right. Tennessee fans would rather see Joe Milton go all out, or Nico go out there and play a slightly above average game. Josh, what do you say?
So they know those results ahead of time. I have to imagine they pick Joe balling out, because if Nico goes out there and plays a slightly above average game, I think that creates some concern heading into the offseason. I think they'd rather the unknown with the anticipation that he will be an elite player versus less than stellar results to diminish the expectations for next season. Because if Nico plays slightly above average, that will be below what most fans expect for him if he makes his first start.
There's a lot of I'm a believers out there. Let me just ask you it way more simple. Do you think Tennessee fans would rather see 60 minutes of Joe or 60 minutes of Nico?
Yeah, take off the results, Nico, without any question.
What about you, Caleb?
I'm going to say slightly above average with Nico, because I still think if Nico's slightly above average, Tennessee fans will exercise plausible deniability of he's young, he'll be fine in the future, he's going to be great, he's got a whole off season to get ready. Look, I mean, we know this, like backup quarterbacks, backup quarterbacks and new head coaches have the longest leash in sports. Like they have a very long leash because it's all, they'll get better with time. And they just need time. And so I think Nico playing slightly above average will still be fine for people.
Nico playing average to below average. Peyton Manning, what do you think of that?
Like, that is total bullshit.
Who said that? Who said average to below average?
I just did. All right. So what down now, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right, so second down is this. What do you think Tyler Barron's going to do? I get hints, and even you and I texted about it. It just seems like he might forego a bowl game. Would that be a surprise to you, Josh?
Yeah, he might be the closest to that decision of opting out versus playing in the bowl game. I'd be surprised if Barron's back next season. I think his plan is for the NFL draft and to move on and be a pro, which I think is a fine decision. I think he's probably ready. So I think he's in a position, him and maybe a couple others that are really close, but Barron opting out and deciding to prepare for the draft would not surprise me at all.
Caleb, you think we'll see Barron in the bowl game? Yet to be determined.
I think we might, guys. I'm not so sure Barron's not going to come back, quite honestly, only because I think Barron to this point has still been underwhelming with his career. Now, he was a lot better this year, and the tape will show that he should have had about 10 more sacks than he did. I don't know any player in the SEC that was held more than Tyler Barron this year. But in terms of
but the thing is that what's changed, though, Caleb, is used to be Philip Fulmer would tell people if you're not a first-round pick, you should come back and improve yourself to a first-round pick. Now, guys, if you're a third or fourth-round pick, you get to that second contract sooner, which is the payday contract.
True, which actually, funny enough, just quick side note, Philip Fulmer, even if you were a first-round pick, he said at SEC Media Days 2007 that he thought Robert Meacham should have stayed another year, which was ridiculous. Robert Meacham definitely should have gone pro after that 2006 season.
Meacham made the right call.
I mean, but it's hard to argue that with the way the contract structure is, Josh, that you wouldn't be better off going for 3 or 4 or 3 years, get a 3-year contract because you're not drafted in the first round, playing that contract out. And we can talk NIL money all you want to, but the rookie minimum $750K. I think if you're a player not a quarterback, you're not approaching $750K in NIL from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it does depend. I see numbers all across the board, but the on-3 projection of a high-ranking defensive lineman or offensive lineman was in the like 200 to 300 range, and maybe that's being a little optimistic in some cases. So you're going to make more in the NFL. I look at it as if you are ready to go and you will be drafted and you will be on an NFL team, then it's a good idea to go to the NFL because you never know. You can improve your stock. You can also get hurt. You might not improve your stock. I mean, that's not a guarantee, and you'll be older, a year older. Like especially if we're talking about a 4 to 5 year player, NFL teams might look at it and say, "Hey, we'll take the 21-year-old versus the 23 or even 24-year-old in some cases." So that plus you start making money, you can start growing money. It's not my job to be responsible for them, but if they make the right choices with the money that they are given, then they're going to be good to go.
Well, then I think I know your answer on third down.
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
If it's Jalen Ward instead of Jalen Wright, he's going to get drafted. Are you
long
telling
gone.
him to?
I would be long gone.
Wow. Not even a question. Caleb, question?
The position he plays is the biggest factor.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
as a
would
running
be
back, I'm out immediately as a running back. And the running back more than anything is like the second contract, because if I have a good first year, I'm holding out in my second year of the NFL. So, it's if I have a splash of a first year, that's it. I want
I love it.
Immediate holdout. Immediate. It's funny that Chris Johnson.
I think you should share that with everyone at your introductory press conference. I hope I have a good year, because I'm sure as hell holding out the second year.
Well, everybody got mad at Chris Johnson for doing that for the Titans years ago. He did it after his second year, but it's like he just rushed for 2,000 yards and he's on a rookie scale making 800,000. Of course, he's going to want to hold out and get a big contract.
Yeah, I do feel for running backs. It's such a difficult spot, because if I had a running back who even did that, I wouldn't give him any more. I would try to help him find some marketing deals, which you can do as a pro. By the way, don't forget that when we talk about NIL. It's supposed to be name, image, likeness, which means marketing, branding. You can do that as a professional. It doesn't stop after college.
Yeah, they're not going to show up in the local IGA is going to be like, I got nothing to do with that guy. Now, this one I've heard varying reports on via my sources.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here, 4th down.
And we're not talking about Coop. For the record, Coop's going to try to come back, and they need to get some NIL money together for him. Brew McCoy, though, I got initially after the injury, and maybe it was emotions, that he was definitely coming back, but he's been in college since I believe 1984. So there's reason for him to think I've had enough of this. You could say the same thing for Coop. And I was told by an NFL scout, and you and I discussed this briefly, Josh, a couple of months ago, that he was the best overall prospect on Tennessee's team for the NFL. Now that was before we knew about James Pierce. Okay. So this is months ago. But if you're that highly regarded by the NFL, I know you have a terrible injury. But again, if you think you can get drafted, I understand the thinking. Although if that was Brew Hooker, I would say come back for another year.
Yeah, part of it is, again, the price tag to come back. But he would be an example of somebody I'm talking about. You're already older. He's dealt with multiple injuries during his time in college at multiple schools. Part of it could be, hey, I want to come back and play a healthy year of football. What if he does get hurt again, even if it's not a significant injury? I mean, that could really scare off NFL teams a year from now. So I don't know exactly where his stock is, but if Brew can be a mid-round pick, that's really difficult to pass on, because if he's good enough to play in the NFL as a mid-round pick, he'll play, and then he can make some money, and there's risk of injury at the next level, but he will have secured more money in the NFL than if he comes back. So it's a tricky spot. Part of it is how much can he do leading up to the draft to show teams what he can be physically, where exactly is his stock, and how much can he get to come back. But there is risk coming back to college if you think about his long-term career.
Kel, let's talk some Arch Manning. He hasn't announced he's going to transfer, but he comes from a family that makes business-like decisions. There is a tie to Tennessee. There is a tie to Ole Miss. Obviously, your thoughts on Arch Manning, and I want to get into the conversation, should Tennessee even reach out for him. But first, Arch Manning leaving Texas, if he does, what kind of decision do you think he might make? Because it looks like Quinn Ewers is coming back and is going to win that job, and Arch might even be third string. So your thoughts on where Arch Manning stands right now?
Oh, did you say me? I'm sorry. I thought you said Caleb.
Yes. No,
yeah.
You go ahead.
Yeah. Let's see what Malik Murphy does. That would be a big indication, because his name is kind of out there. Essentially, any backup quarterback's name is out there, but he was the number 2 this year for Texas. If he were to look elsewhere, then to me, it's an easy call. If I'm Arch Manning, I come back to Texas, I back up Quinn Ewers, and I prepare to be the starter in 2025. Archie made comments in the last 2 months about Eli's path at Ole Miss, redshirting, backing up, then taking over, and how great that was for him. And for Arch, I think that could be just fine as well. If he's planning to be an NFL quarterback, well, being a backup for 2 years in college doesn't hurt anything, especially if you're a backup in a winning program behind a potential first-round pick at quarterback. So I would not be looking to move elsewhere, especially if I get a chance to be the number 2. If he can't beat out Murphy next year, that might be a sign of concerning progress for Arch, which then makes me wonder, okay, well, can he go to any other big-time program and start and play well right away? Tennessee would make 0 sense for Arch Manning, or really for Tennessee. That would just create controversy that this school has not handled well in the past?
I'm going to play devil's advocate because I somewhat believe it. I mean, if things don't work out for Nico, I think he still has the option to transfer. I don't think that's the way this thing's going to go. But now that you have the flexibility of players, I think you also have the flexibility of sitting down with a prospect who may be your future, like a Nico, and saying, hey, we are going to bring other guys in. Sorry if you don't like it, but you can transfer. I wouldn't let Nico's presence, Josh, let me start with you, and I want to get Caleb's thoughts. I wouldn't let Nico's presence affect who I'm recruiting. I mean, they went out and got the Merklinger kid, who's highly regarded, but a year behind. Josh, I would be afraid to let that affect my decision-making process.
I think Tennessee needs to go get another quarterback, but like Arch Manning's not a possibility.
Right.
First of all, if Tennessee evaluated Nico as a better prospect than Arch, and then their message to Nico is, if you don't like it, you can transfer. Well, then that means Tennessee would be choosing a lesser quarterback in their own mind. That doesn't make any sense. And for Arch at Texas to be looking for maybe a better chance to play right away, if he knows Tennessee values Nico, well, then that makes it harder to play than where he is at Texas, because he knows Quinn Ewers gone after a year and Nico has 2 more years in college. I do think Tennessee needs another quarterback, though, but I would be looking more in the market of a veteran quarterback who understands he's going to come in and be a backup, but he can be a part of an offense that has had a lot of success, a coaching staff that's well-respected with Josh Heupel with what he's done. Maybe a guy that he knows he's not going to be a pro quarterback, but he might want to be a coach, might want to be a part of a football future, and potentially help if needed, if something were to happen to Nico. Those guys are out there. They're not easy to find, but you can find those kinds of players. The obvious example of the last 12 months would be Ole Miss going and getting Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State to come in and compete, but ultimately to back up Jackson Dart. They also got Walker Howard from LSU. Or, think about this. Tennessee, for a brief period of time, I think, was in the mix with Gardner Minshew. He was almost going to go to Alabama to be a backup, and then Washington State offered him a starting spot, and he went out there instead. But Gardner Minshew, who is starting right now in the NFL, was a guy that he was a veteran quarterback at a lesser school that almost went to be a backup just because it was a good spot at Alabama. I think Tennessee needs to look for that kind of player. Arch Manning's not a possibility.
Yeah, that's not happening.
Well, I don't think it's happening, but if he had any interest via the Peyton connection, I would explore.
Not happening. Still not happening.
Well, no, I know it's not happening, but I wouldn't let having a highly touted quarterback on the roster prevent me from going out and getting another one. Would be my only point. And let me ask you this, Caleb, moving aside from Tennessee, where do Tennessee fans not want Arch to go, or do they even care? I mean, look at Josh smiling. Are you thinking about a place in Oxford?
Well, no, not that one as much. I think the fear would be if he goes to a school that Tennessee will play. And I mean, I guess they'll play Ole Miss potentially every other year, so you could see. Could you see him in 2025?
I don't know.
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
SEC scheduling such a mess. But yeah, Georgia's probably out because they also have some young guys. But Georgia was in the mix previously. You also have Alabama with the question past Jalen Milroe, although they have a very highly touted quarterback in this 2024 class. I don't think anybody's scared of Florida, so don't have to worry about bringing them up. They also have DJ Lagway coming in.
Well, also, Florida's not going to be an annual rival for Tennessee in the future because that's no longer a rivalry. That's a one-sided rivalry. Tennessee matters to Florida as much as Vanderbilt matters to Tennessee at this point. Sorry, y'all can hate me for that, but they're equally as competitive.
Caleb,
so.
I don't hate you. Speaking of Spencer,
maybe Ole Miss, by the way, is the answer. If you're looking for one, maybe it is, because if you face Lane and Arch and you lose to them, that's not what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I wanted to jump in on this. What I was trying to jump in on with this was that Arch Manning, I think that, Josh, you're right. You're not going to, if you go for a high-profile quarterback like Arch Manning, Nico's gone. And you don't sit there and go for a high-profile quarterback and risk losing Nico over that. Just the fact of trying to recruit one could cause you to lose Nico. And if you went for Nico specifically over Arch, what kind of signal is that going to send, particularly this day and age where you can't have more than 2 elite quarterbacks on the roster? I mean, unless you lie to a veteran. I mean, we all remember Jeremy Pruitt flat out lied to Keller Christ. Basically told him he would have Josh, you probably know more of that than I do, right? Didn't he basically tell him he'd have a fair chance to start, and he was better than Jared Garantano, but he still started Garantano?
Yeah, but
Well, I do think Christ was pitched on the chance to start. I don't necessarily agree that Christ was a better option, but yeah, during those summer workouts, there was no question. I remember some offshore accounts. This is pre legal sports betting in the U.S., but there were offshore accounts that had odds. You could bet on quarterback races in college, and it had Keller Christ as the favorite. With us knowing in Knoxville, no, Jarrett is the guy. He is the guy. And I told some buddies, you should put something on that because
you can short. Can you short sell it? It's like borrowing stock and then you sell it and then you give it back to stock. It's a way of betting it for it to go down. Listen,
You
I
can
don't
still do
care
that
if
with
it-
elections.
Yeah, I don't care if it's Namath, Montana, or whoever the case may be. If you transfer out because Tennessee brings in another quarterback, here's what Peyton says, and he's related to Arch.
They're like, that is total bullshit.
I just can't play that enough. I mean, he wouldn't bolt, would he, Josh? You brought in another quarterback?
Like if Arch came here?
Okay, okay. Let's
What are we
go.
talking about? Are you just talking about a quarterback?
Both, because I'm excited about both. Now,
Arch isn't
quarterback
happening. Like that's a less than 0.1% chance. It's not on the table.
I understand.
But a quarterback, no, he wouldn't leave if they just bring in a quarterback. No, because he's going to go into the spring as the guy's QB1. Everybody knows that. They've talked about it at press conferences about him getting a chance to take over as the guy next year.
Well, it'd be fun though if it was Nico and Arch in the same
But
roster.
The scholarship situation next year is this: Nico and Merklinger. That's it. So they should put feelers out. They should look for quarterback options. It's not going to be a young, super highly touted quarterback that has a ton of options. Like Howard from Kansas State. He's not coming to Tennessee. Tennessee's not going to be on his radar. That level QB. Leonard from Duke. He's not going to look at Tennessee. You're not going to get that kind of guy that can go start at any of the other schools, no question, that offer him a deal. Plus, it costs too much. Like Matt Rule told us, you want to go get a good, proven quarterback, $1 to $2 million. I think they already have some funds allocated.
And yeah, they need to spend that money on other players, not quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I'm Arch Nico. I've already got the shirt design printed up. 2024. Arch
Run the
Nico.
single wing, have them both out at quarterback at the same time, and you don't know who's going to snap the ball.
All right, I know you got to go,
Team
Josh.
Boss and Team Ainge. How did that go in 05?
We did have shirts printed up, Josh. Do you remember that?
Shirts. I do recall.
Can you imagine
TC
running
and
a
TA.
single wing, though?
I
given
recall
their-
the record
given
at the
their
end of the
slowness?
season.
Yes. And a shirt that says TNA always made me think of something else. Josh, great job as always. Noon to 3 on the Sports Animal. He brings the Team Age or the TNA right after the TNA show. That's what you should start to call it every weekday on the Sports Animal.
Go Raiders. Follow me on Twitter. All that good stuff.
I love you. Thank you, Josh.
All right. Thanks.
Josh Ward of the Sports Animal. And he follows the TNA show. Josh Ward, noon to 3 after the TNA show. Team Ainge. We had shirts printed up at the radio station back in the day. Are you for Team Clausen or Team Ainge? Now, those, for the record, violated about in every NCAA rule you can imagine, and we had to pull them all and throw them away. But other than that, it was a great idea.
They probably would have been thrown away anyway. That's like funny enough. There's a old Rocky Top Talk blog. I'm going to send them a shout out real quick. So, Dave, Jerry Green's last year at Tennessee. You remember they had gotten up to number 4, the basketball team, right? They had gotten up to number 4, Jerry Green's last year, before the whole slide started the last month and a half, and he said go to Kmart and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I'm listening to you for the video platform. If I'm looking away at YouTube, because I've got a shirt I want to show you that illustrates your point. Go ahead.
So Jerry Green in 2001, Tennessee had gotten up to number 4. Then they lost a couple, like 3 of 4. They were all on the road. And then they had like 3 straight top 25 games at home. And like the school printed "Not in Our House" shirts for the fans to try to reinvigorate like the program winning at home. And then they lost all 3 games at home.
Ouch. Speaking of printing up shirts that don't really go anywhere, how about this one? And there you go. That was, I'm holding it up. If you're on the audio platform, you don't see that it says Hooker across the front, and it looks quite speedy, which isn't me because it was a reference to Hendon Hooker. But since it's my last name, I couldn't get sued. So I tell you what, the next person,
That was in honor of Bobby Petrino game back at Arkansas.
I want to give away a shirt. How do we give away a shirt before we get to more pressing manners? because we've got a lot to get to.
Pressing matters. Did you say pressing manners?
Yes, we have pressing. Yes, matters.
Pressing manners.
Okay. What do you think about the Hooker shirt? What does somebody have to do to wear that? Tell me that you Smoky Mountain Red says I like hookers. That's enough. Smoky Mountain Red will get a Hooker t-shirt. This one happens to be white and 2X. All right, so hang tight with me. Coming up, players that I believe will return, and also conference championship picks. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This, as always, is a presentation by Off the Hook Sports, and it's represented by Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. It's very easy to find them at banksjones.com.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Have you seen the latest TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do, to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
What's up, everybody? This is Jacob Warren, asking you to like, subscribe, and share. Dave needs this.
The Dave Hooker Show, represented by Banks and Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, banksjones.com.
You're listening to The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
The internet is full of pictures of each and every one of you.
Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free.
Is there nothing you people can't do?
Also available on OffTheHookSports.com.
Somebody just found a way to get a shirt. They said, Dave, how's your son doing at UMass? Straight A's. So you get a shirt. Just email me at dave@offthehooksports.com, dave@offthehooksports.com. Although he might be very fat before long, because did you know that the University of Massachusetts has the top college dining experience in the nation?
Did not know that.
I visited them. I purposefully sat there at about 11 o'clock, ate one meal, waited till noon, ate another meal. First was halibut. Second was my own personal stir fry. And the third was more halibut and soul food. So I ate 3 lunches between 11 and 1:30 a.m. because it was so awesome. And you're telling me that Nico can't put on some weight. Caleb.
I didn't say he can't put on some weight. Where did you get the? I said he couldn't put on weight.
You're always he's too skinny to play.
Yes, but I'm also like he's been putting on the weight that he needs to. He just hadn't put it on to where he needs to yet. But he's on the right track.
I'm your huckleberry.
I'm gonna go ahead and tell you what. I think that it's I think Caleb has been a little hard on Nico. It's not gaining weight as he shouldn't play.
Oh no, I've always wanted him to play in the bowl game. I think that
before the break, Caleb suggested he shouldn't even make the trip to the bowl game.
I'm the one who said he should play. I'm the one who said Josh Heupel should nudge Joe Milton to enter the draft. I mean, I see Nico steroids by Mr. Jones. What's Balco gang? Bring back Balco.
Right. All right. Let's go ahead and get into some conference championships. This is conference championship week. So let's start with this, and then I want to get to your picks. Does it help Tennessee for Alabama or Georgia to win the SEC championship, or does it matter? Your thoughts. Who will you be rooting for? And don't say anybody. If you have to choose one person to win, who is it on the message board? Is it Georgia or is it Alabama? So that's the question I have for you. And as far as the move back to Knoxville, funny enough, we're headed to Knoxville to evaluate some properties today, and we'll pick something, and then we'll give my man Andy Mason a call. So thanks for asking on the message board. So Caleb, who should Tennessee root for? Georgia or Alabama?
I think this is a rare one where it doesn't matter because both are going to be absolutely dominant on the recruiting trail for the next 3 to 4 years anyway. And Alabama, just because they have Nick Saban, and now Georgia. Look, these aren't like a coach with one national title. These are two full-on established programs at this point. There's nothing you can do to break them from being established. And a loss in this game isn't going to change the fact that these two are full-on established. I mean, I guess maybe. Okay, you know what? Okay, I'll root for Georgia on the off chance, and I think it's a real off chance. But root for Georgia on the off chance that maybe if Alabama loses, the narrative gets out there that Nick Saban has done, and that affects recruiting against Alabama.
No, gosh, I was going to be original, and you stole my thought. All right, so perfect scenario. Here it is. Here's the perfect scenario, and I've seen it play out in person, so it can happen. Don't think that it won't. Brought to you by Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety of great selection and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Go to hemphousechat2ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED. hemphousechat2ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED. Perfect scenario. Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, 2 years back-to-back. Help me with the years. They played in the SEC championship. Urban Meyer had this guy named Tim Tebow that led them to a win in the first game, the first SEC championship game that I covered. The second one, things were a little bit different. Nick Saban decided it was time for Urban Meyer to take a little bit of a spanking. So he didn't just take a spanking. Alabama gave out a thorough whipping. And Urban Meyer said to himself, oh, man, I feel something in my chest. It could be a heart attack or it could just be a panic attack. So I'm done coaching. That could happen with Georgia and Nick Saban. We all ask the question, Nick Saban, what will prompt him to retire? And I don't know. I'm just offering this up. Nick Saban dominates the SEC in recruiting almost as high a level as he once did. I know that Georgia gets 3 or 4 prospects that they're both in on every year, and I get that. Kirby Smart is in another league. But what if Nick Saban comes away from that game and says to himself, I'm still a B+ on talent, maybe even an A. Georgia's an A+, and they're close to Atlanta, and I don't think I can overcome that. I think that's what Tennessee wants, despite the fact that they're in the East. There's not going to be an East anymore. But despite the fact that they are a recruiting rival, I think you want Kirby Smart to beat Nick Saban and the Alabama Crimson Tide into submission, into the point of saying, to hell with this. I've had enough. I've had a great career, maybe the best career of all time. It's time to spend time on the lake. I think that's the best scenario. Now, you tell me the best scenario that could play out for Tennessee fans.
Okay, 2 things I want to ask you about this on that, because you covered that Florida-Alabama game, right? The one Tim Tebow's last SEC year, right?
Yeah, I knew afterwards. John Adams and I were sitting together, and John looked at me and said, something's wrong with that man. This was before any of the anxiety attack or the stuff that happened at his house or the esophageal spasm, and he looked wrong. I mean, the guy, I had a coach call me. He said, don't be surprised if that's it for Urban Meyer at Florida. He looked like a beaten man.
Well, and you were knee deep covering recruiting at that time, right? And we were all I was just a fan watching college football. We were all well versed on Florida's internal issues, weren't we? We all knew what was going on. That Urban Meyer had let the program had lost complete control of the program, didn't we?
Maybe just a smidgen, to be honest with you, Caleb. I didn't know that they had. Obviously, I didn't know that they had a future serial killer on their team. I didn't know.
But we knew there was a discipline issue because that was happening that whole season with the arrest.
I knew it. But I'd also seen one at Tennessee that Philip.
But you saw what it did to Tennessee.
Agreed. But Philip Fulmer also kind of cleaned that up too. So I'm just saying I didn't know it was as bad as we've all found out.
Because when I watched that Florida-Alabama SEC title game in 2009, the thing I remember Florida having all the discipline issues that year. I was covering recruiting. Florida wasn't recruiting to the level they had done under, funny enough, Ron Zook of all people. Like Urban Meyer benefited a lot from Ron Zook recruiting, as you know. I was following recruiting and I watched that Florida-Alabama game and I didn't see that blowout and say, well, darn, Alabama was just significantly better. I saw that blowout and I thought, this is a trend. This wasn't a one-off game. This is Alabama is going to be Nick Saban is going to be leaps and bounds ahead of Florida for the next few years. And by the way, for those who don't know, Lane Kiffin, that was Mount Cody's year. Remember when he blocked the field goal?
2009. Yes, I did with his boob.
Yes. Florida was number 1. Tim Tebow, defending national champs. Lane Kiffin takes Tennessee to Alabama. Literally says, he starts touting Nick Saban in Alabama, and he says, no disrespect to Florida, but Alabama's who we model our future after. That's who we want to try to be like. We're trying to be more like them, not really Florida. And everybody thought that's just Lane Kiffin still beefing with Urban Meyer, taking a direct shot. No, Lane Kiffin knew that Florida was about to be done.
The discipline issue? Yeah, no, I think he did. I look back at that and I fault myself, actually. You know, people say they remember losses more than they remember wins. I remember thinking to myself, I should have asked a follow-up question. Why is Alabama the standard and not Florida? That's the follow-up question.
Oh, you were in that press conference when he said that, weren't you?
I was in all those press conferences. Now, he wouldn't have answered it, but that would have been the question. And then you say, when asked why Alabama was the standard, comma, Kiffin said, comma, quotation marks. So that was the follow-up question that I still regret asking. But why was Alabama the standard? Because they were doing it right. We all know now that Florida wasn't.
Yes. So bringing it back to the right now, I would have thought that what ended Nick Saban, what would have been the comparable game would have been 2021, the national title game, when Georgia in a rematch just beat Alabama into submission. Dave, you saw that game a couple years ago.
That's true.
Didn't happen. I think the reason it wouldn't end Nick Saban is because Nick Saban is still doing things the right way. Whatever else you think about him, he's still doing. Like Urban Meyer was not doing things the right way, and I hate to sound like that whole integrity and all of that, because no coach really has that much integrity. They're all cutthroat, okay? Are they not? But let me throw this at you. Nick Saban thinks he's doing it the right way, and he is ethically. But you and I pointed out that his offense is a little bit lackluster after he tried to go tempo with Lane Kiffin. I would also argue that whatever you think of Jalen Milroe, to not be ready at the beginning of the season was a really bad sign. So is Alabama walking in the door and telling a Bryce Young, hey, this is your place. We only want you. You come. I don't know. I don't cover recruiting close enough, but it sounds like to me that either Jalen Milroe showed up on campus and was a little disappointing, or Jalen Milroe was not their first choice. So all of that piles on one another. And one other factor you need to be aware of, brought to you by Tennessee Cider Company, the original hard cider of the Smoky Mountains. Use the promo code HAT to receive some free swag with your order. Available most anywhere in the U.S. That's tncidercompany.com. Promo code HAT, tncidercompany.com. You're not just losing the national championship, Caleb. You're losing your own conference. That's way worse, right? Yes. We're talking about the heart of recruiting. That's the best recruiting area in the country. Like the circle from the Georgia, Florida, Alabama, area. Here's what's scary to Nick Saban. I'll tell you what's really scary to Nick Saban, Dave. Kirby Smart has the lock-in recruiting with Georgia. If Florida State continues to do what they've done this year with Mike Norvell, you know this. The Florida Panhandle, I think that's actually better than the South Florida with when it comes to talent. That Florida Panhandle right there, that right along the Gulf Coast from Tallahassee to Jacksonville.
trying to be careful here because there's so many inner city kids in South Florida. I think there's better character, which turns out to help the ratio of really good players to guys that don't pan out.
No, that's fair.
That a nice way? That's as nice as way I can put it.
What you could just say is
I've been to camp on
because
Miami's campus, and I saw 200 players that could play Division I football, literally in one camp. Probably 300. Probably about 70 did.
Well, here's the best way to say it. It's I'll say it in a better way. Public schools, inner city, are not well funded. They don't have as good a coaching. Whereas that Panhandle area, they can afford great high school coaching, can't they? And great support for the kids and things like that. And so that's where that's and not even the Panhandle to all the way into Alabama, like Mobile, that area loaded with talent. Mobile, Alabama. And what I'm bringing up is that if Florida State is good, they have a lock on the Florida Panhandle. Bobby Bowden owned the Florida Panhandle. That's how he built his whole program. And
a lot of good kids from Tampa now, and you've got IMG. But let me get back to the main topic. What is the best case scenario for Tennessee and the rest of the SEC that's tired of getting dominated by Georgia and Alabama?
So for Tennessee, the best case scenario, you are right, would be for Georgia to win in a big beatdown and hope that sends Nick Saban into retirement. I just think that's a very minor difference because I don't think it's going to happen because I just don't think it's like Florida, Alabama 2009. Where everybody knew that Florida was on very thin ice. And that Florida-Alabama game was just the ice cracked and they sunk.
No, but I walked into that Georgia Dome thinking Florida was going to win because they had Tim Tebow.
Yeah, but you had watched Florida all year. They haven't squeaking by in wins.
I didn't think the whole thing was falling apart. I didn't think Steve Spurrier was going to retire in 2001. I think sometimes we look at this at hindsight and we know it all, 2020. I didn't know it that night. I didn't know Urban Meyer was going to have a freak attack in the middle of the night.
I was watching. But Alabama had back-to-back number one classes, and Tim Tebow was a senior, so he wasn't even going to be back the next year. That loss was an iceberg. That was the Titanic hitting the iceberg of Florida, wasn't it? Florida was the Titanic, and the loss was the iceberg.
But before that game, didn't you think that Florida was going to win with Tim Tebow?
I picked Alabama that game. I did.
Okay.
I picked Alabama the year. I picked Alabama the year before, to be fair, and Florida dominated them. And here was the sign. I think it was actually it was Alabama offensive lineman. Brandon Spikes had been the dirtiest player in football that year. And an Alabama offensive lineman, maybe 2 minutes into that SEC title game, purposely laid a cheap block on Brandon Spikes. And which, Dave, that happens all the time in football. Linemen will lay a cheap block if they can get away with it on a superstar defender, even if it's not anywhere near the play. And laid one on Brandon Spikes. He limped the rest of the game. And what I saw from that game was Florida, this was crazy to see, they were too soft to hang with Alabama. Didn't you think that when you watched that? They were just soft, honestly.
Yes. But I didn't know it until that second SEC championship game. Portions of the program, including Caleb's Random Memories, brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition, rickterryjewelry.com, rickterryjewelry.com. And they also bring you our picks. It's a short slate, but an important one, as it is conference championship time. Still plenty of reason to get excited for this. I don't know if we'll be as excited 2 or 3 years from now, but I don't want to get Caleb started on how he hates the 12 or team playoffs. So let's just get going right now and picks in conference championship games. And it's brought to you today by our friend at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. Rick Terry, those Fire Opals are awesome. Let's go. What do you got? Hey now.
All right. So I'm doing something unique this week, guys. Typically, I only bet SEC and then all top 25 games is what I usually do. By the way, went 4-1 on my bets of the week last week. So now I'm about 52% on both. Just not to brag. I'm very humble, guys. But this week, I'm just going to pick all 10 conference championship games, even the group of 5 ones. And I did a little bit of research on them.
Oh, my Lord.
And
do the group of 5 quickly.
All right. So group of 5 quickly. New Mexico State at Liberty. I got New Mexico State covering the 11.5 spread. I don't think they'll beat Liberty. Liberty's undefeated. But I think New Mexico State covers that spread, and the game hits the under. New Mexico State's been playing good defense. Ask Auburn about New Mexico State.
Okay. What is what is our sounding board thing?
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's like you hate organized religion at Liberty. What's wrong with you? Go ahead. What's next?
Well, yeah, ask Jerry Falwell Jr. about that organized religion. liking to watch his wife with the bullboy.
I stumbled onto that recently, and I didn't know all that backstory, but that was a little bizarro that he.
Oh yeah, liberty, family. Whenever a school's in your face about family, Christian values, there's usually something they're hiding behind it. Just that's the biggest lesson. Hugh Freeze is the most in-your-face Christian coach.
You got 30 seconds to give me those group of 5 picks.
Okay, the other ones. All right, Toledo's going to cover the 8-point spread against Miami, and I got the over 44. UNLV plus 2.5 against Boise State because Boise State fired their coach, and I hear the players are not happy about the coach being fired. So UNLV's plus 2.5, and then I got the under 58.5. Appalachian State and Troy. Troy's favored by 6, but Appalachian State's red hot. I think they cover that 6-point spread, and I got the over 52.5. And then this will be a playoff game next year, Dave, because of the 6 automatic bids. Tulane versus SMU. Tulane's going to cover the 3.5-point spread, and the under 47.5 is going to hit. And Dave thinks that it's good for college football that Tulane and SMU is a freaking playoff matchup. But
I think it's fantastic. I think I love it.
All
right, so let's get to the what is it now? The Big 12, Oklahoma State at Texas.
No, I'm going to start with Friday night, Pac-12.
Okay, I guess I'll just go read a book. You can do what you need to do.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Do you want to?
Go ahead, and I'm going to give you my input, but give me the spread as well. Let's start where you need to start.
All right, so Oregon's favored by 9.5. Dave, I think Oregon's going to cover. I think Oregon's going to beat the brakes off Washington Friday night.
That's crazy. That seems
really.
Yeah, I wouldn't take not as a rule. I wouldn't take 9 in a championship game or a game of matter that that is significant.
Well, the over-under is 65.5. I think the under hits with that one. I think Oregon's defense, I think Washington's offense has been struggling for 2 weeks, and Oregon's defense will make it struggle again.
I'm your huckleberry.
All right, what else we got?
All right, so moving on. Texas, Oklahoma State. Dave, I'm sorry. I know you don't like big spreads. I got Texas covering the 15.5-point spread. I think Oklahoma State is the luckiest team in college football this year. They've got TCU 2022 had good luck happening. So I think Texas is going to cover. Quinn Ewers goes off, and I think the over hits because Quinn Ewers goes off. Texas offense.
It's time to already contradict myself. Hey now. In this particular scenario, I like Texas in the big number. All right, what's next?
All right, so I'll save the SEC title for last since we were talking about it. All right, here's my favorite one. Okay, so here's a bet to stay away from. Stay away from this bet at all costs, and of course, I'm going to bet on it because that's what I do.
Say wham.
But all right, Louisville, Florida State. I have no idea what to bet on this game, but I'm going to bet Louisville plus 2.5. I don't know if they'll win, but I think I just don't know what Florida State we're going to get without Jordan Travis, and I can't count last week against Florida. That's a rivalry game.
Okay, if I'm one of the people listening right now and you say, yeah, you have no idea, but you're giving me a pick, I'm like this.
You suck. Yeah.
All right, so let's go to the next one because nobody play that game and get on board Monday and be like, what happened to you, Caleb? What's next?
Yeah, and then I've got the over 47.5 with that one. So that's all right. So next, all right, this is my favorite one. I'm pretty much sure about all of these. Iowa, Michigan. I got Iowa covering the 21.5-point spread. Michigan doesn't win games by 21 like that. It's too much ball control on both sides. So
I completely agree with that.
Yeah, and then here's the best. Dave, guess what the over-under is set in for this game?
What?
34.5. I'm going under. I'm taking the under on this. I'm seeing like a 21-7 win for Michigan. Maybe even 14-3. I don't know what you think.
No, I can see that. I think Michigan wins comfortably about like they did against Ohio State. What was the final in that?
30-24.
Yeah, but golly, it just felt like Michigan was in control.
But do you think the over-under, do you think the game goes over total 34.5 or under? Iowa had a game last week that was under 27. The over-under was 27, and they couldn't go over. They've been hitting unders all year. It's the worst offense in the history of college football.
I think sometimes the over-under goes over my head. All right, what's next?
All right, now we got last, and this is one we can spend the most time on since we were just talking about it. SEC championship game, Alabama, Georgia. All signs say Georgia should win in a blowout, but I just feel like Alabama plus 5.5. I don't know if they'll win, but I think Alabama's going to cover the 5.5-point spread, and I think it's going to go under 54.5 because I think Alabama's defense is just going to step up.
I don't know why, but I think so too. I think it could be a little bit one-sided. Like I'm not saying 50-20, okay, but I'm saying it could kind of feel like that the game we were just talking about, the Tim Tebow game. It I don't remember the final score in that game, but this could be 10 that really feels like 14 or 17. I don't know why, but I just really like Alabama in this game.
I do too. And also we both agree Georgia's been getting by on, can we say this much in Nick Saban's favor? Now, Kirby Smart's a great defensive coach, but Georgia largely has gotten by because their talent overwhelms everybody, haven't they? And I mean, I can't really say I've seen a lot of scheming. One of the things I thought about with Nick Saban that I thought was
the
really
run pass against Tennessee.
The run
Where they pitched it. I don't understand why you pull out trick plays against teams that you've already got beat. But anyway.
Billy Napier pulls out trick plays when his team is up 12-0 and driving and ready to take control.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with the teams running up the score either. But to me, running the run pass, which they ran against Tennessee, is analogous to running up the score. I have no problem with either, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me because I think it hurts you down.
Yeah, exactly. And I've said it all year, and I've looked stupid all year, Dave. But I'm going to go back to it. I still am sticking with my guns on this. I'm still going to say that if things get a little tight against a team like Alabama, I trust Nick Saban over Mike Bobo. And you
Harris Hilton, a great sports track. Yes, I do too. I mean, and I could see this being a game where Georgia looks like the better team for a half and a halftime adjustment, a la Tennessee with Nick Saban. Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates. You go to Facebook and go to Sports Treasures TN. Sports Treasures TN. The daily updates are awesome. I share them on offthehooksports.com. By the way, go to Off the Hook Sports on our Facebook page. Like that, follow, because you'll get the latest information. You can check out the book. The book is what I call it because it's been a bear. Relive the greatest season in Tennessee football with behind-the-scenes story about the 1998 National Championship team. Click below for Celebrate 98, the untold stories behind the Tennessee Vols 1998 National Championship, available in soft and hard copy, personalized autographed copies available. And I can tell you this, nobody that's read the book has come out and completely told me that it sucked. I don't know how you would do that if an author says, because I follow up and I say, I'm just curious how you like the book. And I've learned that they all say, yeah, it's good. I enjoyed it. And I just wonder if some are lying to me.
I could see that, but I don't think they are. I don't think they are. A couple of things I wanted to address real quick.
A lot of people, by the way, let me just say this too. A lot of people weighing in on Tennessee's basketball team. We led the show with that, so you can always go back and listen.
Well, I'm going to, and before this ends, I'm going to respond to one last comment, but I want to get to, I want to get to one. Smoky Mountain Red. Bobo is not Georgia's Cutcliffe. Sorry.
By the way, Smoky Mountain Red, nice enough to say 0 sucks given to Hooker's book. I appreciate that.
Bobo is not Georgia's Cutcliffe. Bobo is Georgia's John Chavis, but on the other side of the ball. And so I think that this is what I'm talking about. I think
he's getting ready to coach. So he's getting ready to coach middle school football. Is what you're telling me.
Well, I'm potentially I'm potentially seeing what you just said, 2001 style SEC title game. How much better talent wise was Tennessee than that LSU team? It wasn't even close, right? They weren't even in the same stratosphere. And Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher made one adjustment, and Chavis couldn't figure it out for the life of him. And I'm kind of seeing that could happen with Mike Bobo. Now, that's all I wanted to say on that, but I just have to respond to
all I got to say about that. Are you going full Forrest Gump
No,
here?
I want to give a news segment on this. SEC football, I get your point. Vescovi was 0. He should be shameful and embarrassed. I got to break some news on this. Santiago Vescovi was dealing with an injury. He also went back home to Uruguay this off season because there was a personal family matter. We don't know what that family matter is. But Wes Rucker tweeted this out last night, and it's true. He's not been the same since. I think we should all just reserve a little judgment on him because I think we all remember Chris Lofton having that underwhelming senior year, and then we find out what happened. I'm not saying Vescovi has cancer or anything like that. I'm saying that there's a personal matter that he hasn't let us on, and I think it might be affecting his play right now.
Well, I was going to mention the Chris Lofton thing. I'll share a quick Uncle Dave story if you don't mind. So Mike Griffith, who we've had on, was in charge of covering basketball at the time. And they asked me, they said, can you go over and cover this basketball banquet? And I'm like, I've never been asked to cover a banquet in my life, but free food. It's the off season. Sure, I'll go cover it. It counts as a work day. And they basically sat down in an impromptu press conference and said, oh, by the way, the best player on the basketball team has testicular cancer and has had so all year. So you're like, what? I mean, you had no idea that there was any news like that coming out. It was the same thing with the Bruce Pearl press conference, the original one where he had lied to the NCAA. We all thought maybe we kind of thought he was hiring an assistant coach, and Mike Griffith would never admit it, but he got blown away by that. He had no idea that that was coming. He was out of town, and I covered the Chris Lofton thing, and I suddenly thought to myself, there are all those people that handled Chris Lofton respectfully, and I want to give you kudos as a fan base. Let's handle this part respectfully too, because people would say, I don't know what's wrong with Chris Lofton, but something just doesn't seem right. That's a very fair way of saying it. And you can say the same thing with Vescovi, because we don't know what's happening with his family. Say that. Don't say he suddenly spit the bit and he's terrible. I would offer that. I'm not telling you I know the inside as to what's going on, but it's something we'll look into. And if it's something I feel like I should and could share with you, I will. But family problems is family problems, kids. We have fun being on here. We enjoy spending time with you. But if that young man has a serious family issue, that trumps all else, needless to say. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports, weekdays at 10 a.m. Turn the notifications on and give us a rating, too, if you don't care, on our audio platforms such as Spotify and Apple. That helps us get out there even more, and we love how that audience continues to grow. So for the one, the only, Double C, Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation.